As always, today's podcast is sponsored by Fire Facilities, makers of reliable, all-American steel fire training structures built the way you train. Fire Facilities towers, burn rooms, and mobile units help you prepare to respond and survive. Today's guest is Ian Bennett. Now, Ian is a captain in the training division for Seattle Fire. He is one of the leads for the Seattle's live fire cadre. Taught at the Washington State Fire Academy for 3 years, and he is the owner-operator of West Coast Fire Training, which he started in 2018. West Coast Fire Training helps departments put on acquired structure live fire training. You can check out his website and Facebook page for more on that. Now, Ian is an amazing person. I've had him on the podcast before. I love talking to him. I chat with him somewhat often, but he is a great inspiration when it comes to live fire training. He does it a lot. He has a lot of great information. Be sure to listen to him. With that, here's Ian Bennett.
No, not this year.
What? Why not?
Put in the proposal and they said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. So I can't foot the bill of going all the way out there on my own. So not this year.
Yeah. Sorry I didn't get to see you when I was out there a couple of weeks ago. Everything kind of fell apart.
No, it's all good.
Yeah,
everybody's busy. You especially.
Yes, and March is about to be very busy for me. I'm very fortunate. I got a bunch of gigs to go teach, so I'm pretty stoked about that. But yeah, I love Washington State, man. I just love it. So my wife, she's coming into SeaTac. She's taking some of my daughters, her sister, and their daughter, and they're going to go to Oregon. But they're coming into SeaTac, and I told them, I said, man, Seattle's one of my favorite places to go. So I'm trying to get her to go to the Gum Wall and try to get her to I love Pike's Market a lot. What else? I love that area. By the way, we already started. So people are listening to the podcast right now going, what the hell is this all about? This doesn't like fire shit.
Yeah, travel plans. Come out to the West Coast.
Yeah. So welcome back to 3-Point Firefighter. Today we have a guest. It's been on before, season 2, Ian Bennett. I love Ian Bennett. He's great. I'm fortunate to have him on here. I love talking to him about 1403, along with other stuff. So, Brother Bennett, thanks for being back on.
Hey, always a pleasure to chat with you, Jake, about live fire, 1403, and fun training stuff.
Oh yeah. I don't even know where to start. I wonder if we should take off with training or 1403 specific. I don't know. What do you think?
Let's go with training in general, and then we can talk about how 1403 affects that.
I love it. So let me ask you this. What do you struggle with when you're training your own people? Do you have trouble with buy-in? Do you have trouble with the materials? Do you have trouble with like doing a gap analysis or a needs analysis, anything like that? What's your biggest problem in Seattle? Honestly, that didn't sound right. Wait a minute. That didn't sound right. What's your biggest problem in Seattle? I set you up, didn't I? I'm sorry. What are some of your personal struggles with training in your current position?
Honestly, our biggest struggle, and this is going to sound weird, but our biggest struggle is managing all of the stuff that we can do. Our training division is well-staffed, well-funded, and we have such a wealth of opportunities right now that the pedals to the metal all the time, and our struggle is to kind of consolidate what we've got, give our guys occasional breaks between training evolutions. We have a wealth of acquired structures in Seattle right now. So it's essentially, okay, next week we're going to do this cool training over in this acquired structure. And by the way, in the meantime, we got to prep the next building for 2 weeks from there. And then a week from there, we're going to do live fire training for the recruits. And after that, I want to do a RIT drill for 7 companies in this other building. So we got to figure out a way to smoke up this, 2,000 square foot office complex. So get all that done, guys. That's our main problem right now. Unlike most people who struggle to find good training opportunities, our problem is the opposite. We've got so much going on. We're just running at 100 miles an hour just to take advantage of everything we have.
So how big is your training division?
So our division is divided into two sides. There's recruit training, and then there's operations training. So I'll just talk about operations training right now. We've got 11 people in firefighters from our operations battalion chief on down. There's 11 of us, and then there's four admin staff who support that as well in various ways.
So why do you have enough recruits going on constantly that you have your own division?
Yes. So right now, our average recruit class is starting with 60 people. And so we have a captain, 2 permanent lieutenants, and then usually 8 to 10 in folks who will come in just to teach the class.
So you mentioned there were 2 different separate like divisions, but do they ever have to intersect at all? Do you ever have to share that kind of stuff, or do you deliberately try to keep it separate?
Mostly they interact when the recruits are doing live fire training, because the operations members manage and organize most of our live fire training. We have a live fire training cadre that has to get certified through the operations side. And so people are going to be ignition officers, have to run and organize the live fire training that the recruits go to.
What do your recruits come out with? Are they firefighter 1, 2, paramedics, or hazmat? I mean, what's all that?
So they all have to be EMT, but that's different. They don't get that in recruit school. And so, yeah, it's firefighter 1, firefighter 2, hazmat, awareness. Pretty basic. If you want to get like more in depth on tech rescue, hazmat, you got to go to one of the teams.
Okay. Now, how many stations do you have, and how many people do you have on the rank?
We've got 33 stations, roughly 1,000 members. Probably not quite 1,000 right now. We're still a little understaffed.
So you mentioned having all these like extra places to train, all these acquired structures and stuff like that. Why is there so many in your area?
So, and when I said we had 11 people, that's just the people who are permanently assigned to training division right now. There's another group of firefighters and officers who kind of work with the training division. And there's 3 of those, and one in particular who really developed our acquired structure training program to the point where we have regular buildings coming in. This guy, I'll just throw his name out there. This guy named Jordan Legan. Was actually the face of FDIC a couple years ago. Good looking man you could see his face on all the FDIC ads.
Oh,
and he basically took our acquired structure training program from this kind of ad hoc, every once in a while you get something, to a fully developed program where we're regularly interacting with high level developers around the city, to the point where a number of these developers will send us lists and say, hey, this is what we've got coming up. Does this work for you? How can we share this resource? He's constantly building connections with all these different contractors in the city. And then, of course, the contractors talk to each other. We have well-developed paperwork. So when they say, oh, how do we do this? They say, here's your checklist. Here's the paperwork we need. If you have questions, call these 4 different people. And so that over the years has really developed so that we constantly have stuff coming in. Now, we can't use everything that comes in in super creative ways. But one thing that we've done is we try and use everything somehow. I've noticed going into the thing about talking about acquired structures without live fire.
Oh yeah.
I would say 10% of what we uses fire, maybe less, maybe like 5%. Most of the training we do in acquired structures is destructive training or just drills of some type that don't involve fire, don't involve breaking walls. It's just a place to train that's not our training facility, because everybody knows our training facility like the back of your hand.
Right.
So just letting the companies pull lines and drag hose through a building that they're not familiar with is so valuable for them.
Oh, I would agree. That's one of the problems I have with my tower, which I think I've got a pretty nice tower, but they know every inch of it. The firefighters know every inch of it. So having the houses, I could see being a big benefit. Now, I've got the two weirdest things that I've gotten for acquired structures that I couldn't burn, but I could train in was two elementary schools. And it was awesome. It was some of the best, hands-on stuff there. What about you? What does Seattle Fire got that was just like unbelievably awesome acquired structure training?
So the one we still have it actually. This is when it's been kind of unique. We've been able to use it for over 6 months now. And we used it initially for just dry line stretches and wet hose advancement, but no flowing water. So we do an annual fireground survival training and firefighter rescue training. And so we built out, it's an office complex. It's not that large, but it has several hallways and was easy to smoke up. So we created a simulated collapse prop, had the companies respond in, had a collapse start, ran a full mayday where they had to pull the firefighter out, breach a simulated wall, and do firefighter accountability with the chief running the whole show. And we ran all of our operations members through that, within reason. Obviously, folks on vacation, stuff like that didn't go, but it was, we did 4 weeks in that building, and it was amazing. The amount of lessons learned for running the Mayday, transmitting the Mayday, interacting as companies in a simulated Mayday, it was amazing. Lots of good feedback.
You brought up Mayday. What do you all use, Lunar, or do you use the Who, What, Where?
We use the term LCAN for our general updates, and then if we're calling a Mayday, we'll use your Who, What, and Where. So once you call the Mayday, chief or the IC is going to come back and say, unit calling Mayday, go ahead with your Who, What, and Where, along with a few other things.
Yeah, I mean, the Lunar is great, but man, it sure is a lot to try to remember. And then when people are trying to, if they, God forbid, they really are needing help, okay, well, a location, okay, a unit, that seems like it's just crazy. Who, What, Where just seems so much better.
Yeah.
So, okay, how many times do you think you get acquired structure, say, in a year's time, and you actually train in them versus training on your own fire ground?
So this year so far, we've had 3 different acquired structures, and it's February.
Wow. Now, you say you don't have to burn all of them. You do a lot of training in there. Let's talk a little bit about the burning, though. I like having shit on fire and going in there, right?
Yeah, me too.
You do too.
Me too.
Well, yeah, exactly. So that's how I found out about Ian Bennett. When people several years ago, people talk about live fire. There's 2 main names that always come up: your name and then Dave Pruitt down in Texas, and then also Cameron Sunderland in Altoona, Pennsylvania. So whenever live fire comes around, I always hear these names, and I've got to meet all 3 of them. I've been really fortunate to meet all 3 of you in person. And I've also, I don't want to go too far into West Coast training yet, but I love what you put in there about your live burns. So let's go to 1403 then when you're doing these live burns. How hard is it for you to follow 1403?
It's easy, honestly. I mean, would it be easier not to have to follow any standard? Of course, but for us, it's just the way we do business. As I mentioned the last time we chatted, 1403 is state law, so it's just baked into how we operate. If we're not going to follow it, it's not going to happen, right? And everyone throughout our cadre is all, I mean, the folks at the firefighter level probably are not as aware of the details of 1403 as someone like myself or the chiefs up above me, but everybody understands that that's what we're being held to. And even the firefighters understand the basic rules in it because it's just baked into how we educate folks, how we do business. And myself and our battalion chief of training and our deputy chief of training, we review the standard probably before every fire. So,
oh, wow. Do you find little nuggets in there hidden every now and then?
At this point, not so much.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I've been operating under it for close to a decade now. So I feel like I have a pretty clear understanding of what it says.
Okay, good. Now I want to ask you a question. A couple questions about 1403. So I'll just flat out ask you this one, and you tell me your view on it, okay? Does the standard say that the safety officer cannot do anything else? He can only be safety.
I don't think it says that.
Exactly. It doesn't, right? So I try to read it every time we do live fire, and whenever I get to go and train with live fire, I always try to get it out and read it. Well, I'm old. My brain is really soft like pudding, so I guess I forget stuff. Well, every time I get to that and I teach it, I have taught it that the safety officer can't do anything. But if you actually read the standard, it says he can't do anything that would impede his job, basically. So now that kind of opens up some thoughts. So WIC, your instructor in charge, I've always said all the heavy lifting, all the hard work that they have to do is the weeks, months before the live burn. The day of the live burn, it is the easiest job in the world, right?
If you've done your job right.
If you've done your job right, thank you. And you've got a good crew, if you've cadre.
Yeah, if you don't have a good cadre, then it's WIC. It can get real wonky real fast.
Yes. The wheels usually come off at the end of the day kind of thing. But here's my question. Do you think it would be, and not a loophole, but do you think that a WIC could also turn, once they start the evolution, become safety officer?
I think so.
Yeah. Dude. Perfect.
I think so. I mean, again, that's really going to depend on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve with the live burns. So for instance, I've done that. I've been WIC and safety when I've done West Coast fire training burns. And what we're doing is a single burn in a single acquired structure with a small student body and a high instructor to student ratio. And so I feel comfortable saying, okay, my crew is highly skilled. We're all on the same page. It's a high skilled student body. And so I can act as safety once the fire's been lit, because as you mentioned, there's not much for me to do after acknowledging the radio comms and okay, we're good to go. On the other hand, when we're doing recruit fires at North Bend, we're doing 3 different fires in 3 different locations because it's a great big fixed facility. The IC is managing probably 20 instructors or firefighters who are there to support the operation. There's sometimes 30 recruits there. They're interacting with the state. There's a ton of logistical stuff going on. And so the idea that the WIC is going to be able to effectively manage the safety portion is a pipe dream, right? Our safety officer in that case has to be a separate person with a partner who's essentially roaming throughout the burn building, checking on the status of all the different fires, making sure that, recruits aren't getting overheated, that instructors aren't getting overheated. It's, they are busy.
Right.
And so, I mean, it really depends on the level of risk that you're engaged in and what that safety officer needs to do. And so just because the WIC could technically act as the safety officer doesn't mean they should. You got to think hard about what you're actually working with.
So here, I totally agree, man. I mean, you definitely know that standard. So, but here's what I'm thinking. And I've never done it, and I don't think I ever will do it. But one of the things that we teach is a minimum standards drill. Like we give everybody, different groups, the different scenarios, right? It could be for incumbent training, new recruit training, and then they have to go through the standard and come up with the absolute minimum number of people. And so that's that. Well, you go on the other side of it. Then after we do that, we say, okay, now what's your wish list? How do you want to exceed it? But when I get to that minimum standard, I always think about some of these smaller departments that don't have the resources. They don't have a lot of people to come in. Now, I am not at all for loopholing or short round a 1403 standard at all, ever. But I got to thinking about it. I'm like, well, if safety, honestly, technically safety could do it. And honestly, WIC is not doing a whole lot. The only thing I can come up with, honestly, is, and this might even be the answer. The standard mentions that the WIC and the safety officer will work together, which to me implies 2 people, right? I think the implication is you need 2 people for these positions. for some of these smaller departments that don't have resources, could it be safely done? And I think you said it perfectly. Hey, if I got one room, one house, small group, a lot of instructors, yeah, I mean, or, a good ratio, why couldn't I? But it's just something I always try to read it and see if there's anything that I'm missing. And I get these nuggets, but again, my brain, it's not that good.
Yeah, I mean, that version of the standard was written in 2018. And so you got to wonder, did the authors at the time think about this option? In my observation, most of the stuff that the authors were really worried about prohibiting, it says in black and white, you shall not do this. Mm-hmm. And in other areas, I feel like that's where we have to use our experience and our critical thinking skills to just make a good decision. Right. Like you said last time, if I'm worried that maybe there's some gray in the standard here, well, then I just need to overbuild the safety system so that I can meet the intent, or, think hard about what are the risks involved and how do I mitigate them. And then if I can't mitigate them, maybe I have to change something. You can't just read the standard and say, yeah, I'm complying with the standard, so I'm good to go. I think that's a trap that you can fall into if you just say, I'm complying with the standard, so I'm safe. That is not true. That's like saying I drive the speed limit all the time, so I'm safe.
Yeah, I can't get in a wreck.
I'm checking my phone. I'm not paying attention. I'm, don't have enough sleep. But I'm driving the speed limit, so I'm safe. Yeah. It will help you, right? It will help you reduce some risks, but it's not going to. If you're not paying attention, it's not going to save you.
No, and you and I have had these conversations before, especially about exceeding 1403. So I'm recently on a campaign to exceed 1403, and my argument for those people that will say, well, you can't possibly follow NFPA standards, or it's not for practical application, blah, blah, blah. I disagree. For one, the new 1700 standard actually it's a great example. It's a very robust standard, unlike 1403, but I think you can follow it. I think most people don't take time to read it. But when it comes to 1403, wait a minute, my train pulled out of the station. I told you, right here. I got pudding for brains. I think you can, and you need to exceed it when you can. And I'll give you an example, and maybe you could throw some my way too. So I feel like, to your point, exactly. Hey, I'm following 1403. Nothing can go wrong. That's not true. You might have narrowed that safety margin, right? But or actually, you got it a good safety margin. But what I'm going to say, let's widen it. Let's exceed it. And there's some things we can do. For example, the standard says your minimum GPMs is 95. That's a freebie right there. You can flow more than 95 GPMs in these modern nozzles, right? Almost double it if you got a smooth bore. Another one is you don't have to have any transport for any live fire unless it's acquired structure, right? And it doesn't have to be ALS. So how can we exceed? If you have the ability, have ALS transport on fixed facilities, right? So now you're really increasing that safety margin. And there's a bunch of little things like that you can do. Is there anything that you do that you feel like is exceeding the standard so you can make a really nice safety buffer?
Well, you mentioned one of them, and that is GPM flow rate. I mean, if you wouldn't, to me, that seems obvious. You would never send someone into an actual house fire flowing 95 GPM. It's 150 minimum. So why would you have them flow less during a training evolution?
Right.
I can't understand that. The other way that we exceeded is additional hose lines, especially in the acquired structure realm. Yeah, we will have, exposure lines, interior safety lines, just all over the place to massively exceed the flow rate, just on the off chance that the person on the nozzle falls over, or one of the engines fails. We've had that happen. So yeah, it's things like that. Increasing the student ratio or instructor to student ratio, or reducing the number of students on the inside is one that we do a lot. People always want to jam as many people as they can inside the building so they can feel some heat and see some fire. And that's all great. We need that. But when you start thinking about how are we going to get out this one door and this one window when something goes wrong,
Mhm.
suddenly you start pulling people out again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's our big one is more hose lines, less students.
That's a great one, right? That's a really good one, and honestly, that's probably one of the easier ones you could do. Another one I like to do is have more than one safety officer. I mean, the standard says a safety officer, right? I love the idea of having interior safety, exterior safety. You could have a division safety depending on what you're doing. The more eyes, the better when it comes to stuff like that. Again, we want to widen that buffer. We want everybody to go home, have a good time. You mentioned heat. Where do you stand on?
Before we move past it, I was
Yeah.
going to mention the one other thing we do to quote unquote exceed the standard, which is the experience and training of the instructors. Right?
Oh, that's a good one.
To like your minimum requirement is instructor one,
Mhm.
which is based around how to teach in the classroom. Has absolutely nothing to do with live fire training.
Right.
So to me, I honestly have started to think about live fire training as kind of an unrecognized like technical discipline in the fire service. You look at line of duty deaths and you look at close calls and injuries when it comes to live fire training. And most of the time you read the stuff that happened and it's so obvious that the problem was no one there had any idea what they were doing. Good intentions, right? Good people, maybe even good firefighters, but the idea that that being a good firefighter makes you a good fire instructor, not the same thing, the same thing at all. And you see people engaging in risky behavior because they just don't know any better, right? They just don't know any better. And so you have to educate people to a much higher level if you want to be able to conduct, especially highly realistic live fire training and in acquired structures. You just don't get to do that right off the bat. Right, you got to pay your dues. You got to get brought up and trained up.
So you bring something very interesting up, and something I don't know that we've talked about yet is the how do you indoctrinate your new live fire instructor? So say you got a guy you just want to bring him into the cadre, all right, but he hasn't done it. What roles do you give him or her to start to develop them into that live fire instructor you need?
So the first thing is before you even put them in any of the roles, you have to educate them on what we're talking about. So we got a bunch of stuff written out that I have for West Coast Fire Training. And if we're going to bring somebody new on, it's like, hey, here's all this stuff I expect you to read. By the way, 1403, you got to read all that. Here's all these descriptions of how we do evolutions and why. This is the fire behavior that we're looking for and why. This is the expectation for the person on the nozzle and why. And until you understand all that and all the different jobs that are involved and all the roles that are involved in those jobs, and by the way, here's the teaching points for each individual position and when you should teach them. Until you've read all that and demonstrated that you know it to us, like we're not even going to put you in there, right? And then when you're going to put them in for the first time, ideally, you just have them as a student. Right, so you bring them in and they just shadow another instructor. So in Seattle, that's what we do, right? You just come in, you shadow another instructor. And then at West Coast Fire Training, once you start teaching, the first thing you do is you just teach the observation group. So most of our live burns, there's a group that just sits and watches because you can get a ton of learning done just by sitting there doing nothing. In fact, it's some of the best learning. But it's also the easiest to teach because there's no dynamics that you have to control like you would with like a search crew or the nozzle, right? If you're the nozzle instructor, you may have to take the nozzle from the student in the moment and put the fire out.
Right.
And as the observation group instructor, you just have to give the right lessons based on the fire presentation at the time, and then make sure the students go where you want them to go. And so that's usually the simplest. That's where they'll start off.
I see. And I was going to ask you. Oh, yeah. Okay. So now let's play a little game. Don't worry, I'll cut that part out. I might even cut out.
I love these games. Jake.
Oh, good. I got one for you. You got to pick one thing in 1403. As a matter of fact, we're going to pretend for a second that you're actually on the 1403 committee. Spoiler alert, you are. So you get to remove one thing from 1403 or change one thing. What's it going to be? Not add yet. We're not to add. We're only changing something that's in there. And I think you know what I'm going to say.
I would say I want to be able to burn underexposed structural members.
Okay. Okay.
I want to be able, because for two reasons. I want to be able to simulate basement fires, and a lot of the buildings in our region that have basements have exposed structural members, and so you can't burn in there unless you want to take a lot of time and money and effort to sheet the basement, and you just can't do that. Other thing I want to do is I want to be able to simulate an attic fire or a knee wall fire.
Oh, yeah.
Because those fires basement fires, attic fires, and knee wall fires present in very unique ways. And they're not as common as regular room fires. And so one of our main goals when we do acquired structure live fire training is to create cues for the firefighters to recognize specific fire conditions and then take the right action based on those cues. And so if I can't create a basement fire, how am I going to give them a cue for that?
Right.
I can't.
Yep.
And if I can't create a knee wall fire or an attic fire, how can I create a good cue? I can't. Right?
Nope.
And when you look at burn times prior to collapse, most of our burns last from 5 to a really long burn would be 9 minutes.
Right.
So those are short burns, right? You're not going to have structural collapse in that amount of time with normal construction. Now, if you have lightweight construction, maybe you just don't do burns in those areas, or you could put in a rule that says, hey, anytime you burn under this, it can't be longer than a 4 or 5 minute burn, and post every single time. You got to air the building out and check the structural integrity. Right? There's lots of ways to manage that particular risk that don't involve just saying, hey, you can't do it. So that would be my one. I want to be able to burn under exposed structural members.
That would be awesome. And then, I mean, the science is already there. The ULFSRI did their study on floor systems, and they have that chart. And don't quote me on this, but I believe it's like a 2x8 dimensional lumber, unprotected was like 6 minutes, right? And then I want to say it was almost 3 times that protected, and then it goes up into 2x10s. But then I think the best one of that chart though was plaster and lath. It wasn't exposed members, but it lasted like 40 some odd minutes. So I think there's science there to back up what you're wanting to do. And that would be good. I mean, honestly, you could get a fire behavior class. You could get a building construction class all in one. And you're right. When we do these live burns, it's in a box. And that's not what fire wants to do. Fire wants to get outside the box, and it wants to get out every way possible. Getting those void spaces. How are we supposed to predict it? They like that the BAG acronym, which I love. Been at going, and being able to burn with that, you could actually work that in. I totally agree. So, do you remember what my biggest gripe is about 1403?
I think you said
for
something
adding
double IC having to be instructor 2. Fire.
Drives me nuts. Drives me insane. Yes, that's exactly it. So for those listening, according to 1403, you shall be an instructor 2 NFPA 1041 to even be a double IC. Double IC is the person that runs the entire fireground for a live burn. He's not necessarily command. Double IC means instructor in charge. So you might even have a command component to it depending on your scenario. So my gripe is they need to be should. I think it's great if they can be. But like you mentioned, 1041, instructor 1 or 2 doesn't have a whole lot about live fire instructors. They really don't. And I'm hoping that will change. So yeah, that's my biggest gripe, because some people, I mean, you're just whittling down really good instructors, live fire instructors, by forcing them to be instructor 2. So that's my big gripe. That's to change, not to add. Now let's keep going with this game. What do you want to add?
What do I want to add? Ooh, that's you're gonna dislike it, but I think there's more. I think there should be more educational requirements to be able to be a live fire instructor.
Damn it, Ian! Damn it!
I said that it was an unrecognized technical discipline. There's got to be more asked of people who are conducting the training, not necessarily of the students, but of the people putting the training on.
So you do want to keep the shall, and then throw some more stuff on top of there.
For instructor 2?
Yeah.
No. I think you could eliminate instructor 1 and instructor 2. I think they provide no value when it comes to live fire training. I think we need a totally different set of expectations for a live fire instructor.
Now I'm on board with that. I am on. Matter of fact, I've never heard it put that way. It's like a technical rescue thing. So why not treat it like that special, unique thing? You're right. Oh no, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of all occurred to me when I was looking at this picture that a friend of mine took of a different kind of a current legend in the Seattle Fire Department. Lieutenant Frank Brannon was in the rescue company for a long time. Was actually on the NFPA committee that wrote a bunch of the rope rescue standards that are now in existence. And there's this great picture of him hanging off a high rise in Seattle. They're doing some rope training. It's a beautiful sunny day. He's smiling. The other people in the picture are smiling. And I was just thinking to myself, like, if that system fails, he would die, right? He's up 50 stories in the air, right? The only consequence to failure in the system is death. And everyone who looks at that picture thinks, yeah, that's really cool. That looks awesome. That looks fun. Because the underlying assumption is that you don't get to play in that world if you are not prepared, right? Mm-hmm. You and I would never think to ourselves like, yeah, you want to go set up a 3-1 and hang off the Sears Tower today? That sounds like a great time. No, man, I don't think we're ready for that. I don't think we're ready for that. But when it comes to live fire training, you ask somebody, hey, you want to go light 2 rooms on fire and send the new guys in to go put it out, and we're going to watch it inside. Like, oh yeah, it's going to be fine. No big deal. I'm a good firefighter.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to build this now. We're going to build it. I love it. You got me on board. So what are some of the subjects that these good live fire instructors have to have?
So you have to have a clear understanding of the visual, heat, and smoke cues for different levels of fire behavior. Mm-hmm. So we watch fire behavior on TV. We watch fire behavior in fire boxes, but we rarely watch fire behavior inside actual houses as it progresses. Mm-hmm. And so what you'll notice is unless people have a ton of time on the job and have been busy, right, at busy companies seeing lots of fire, they're not good at reading the different cues as the environment changes. And they're often caught by surprise with the speed of transition at different points in the event. Right. And that's
okay. And
so they don't realize how quick the time is from when it's okay, it's fine, not fine, and how that transition happens very quickly.
Yeah.
And just that alone, being able to recognize those, and that would be an educational piece. Like, hey, you got to be involved in live fire training for this long, have seen this many burns at this level of intensity before you can run the event yourself.
So a good robust fire behavior background.
Yeah.
Is that a good?
Yeah.
Inside, but yeah, inside a box. Okay.
Well,
I was gonna say with that, I think we would have to tack on building construction then, right? Because they need to know how fire is going to act, and then how fire is going to act in the box. So that'd be math. I'd add that in.
And I don't know how you educate people on this, but a better concept about how to manage risk during live fire training and what the true risks actually are. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, in the fixed facility realm, we have to comply with a lot of these things about fire behavior, but we rarely recognize that one of the biggest risks is the instructors taking too much heat and damaging themselves and their gear.
Yes.
And how to recognize those factors and how to control your own ego so that you can say to the IIC, like, hey man, I need 20 minutes, not 5, not 10. I need 20 minutes with my gear off, hydrating before I can get my core temperature down.
Right.
And that's something even I had to wrestle with for a long time, and it requires additional staffing. It's hard, but more education about what the true risks are in different scenarios, what the common errors are. I think people sometimes make a bunch of these errors because they don't even know what they are.
No, well, exactly what you said, though. If you look at 1503, the way we started talking about this was basically a live fire instructor in a lot of ways may not know, doesn't know what they don't know, right? So that's step one. Well, it's kind of funny because 1403 came about because of Boulder, Colorado. I know you know that, right? Well, for those who don't know, the instructor was brand new, and he wasn't even doing live fire. He was doing a search and rescue drill with, tires and oil, and then we ended up losing Scott Smith and William Duran. And there was one person injured, and I apologize for not knowing that person's name right now. But it was a lack of training and lack of understanding of fire and fire in boxes, right? So that kicked off an investigation. We got 1403, and now bring it back to what you said about an instructor and ego and taking all that heat. Well, one of the things is we teach is Pennsylvania State Fire Academy lost an instructor. And they were doing a class on developing live fire instructors. Really good department, really good. Everything was fine. But unfortunately, they didn't have in place something to say, hey, you have to sit out, right? He even went upstairs. They were doing basement fires. And he actually went upstairs to get more fuel and they said, hey, you don't look good. Yeah, it's hot as hell down there, right? And unfortunately, he passed away down there. So we have to fight ourselves, basically, our egos and everything. But I love that. I love what you said. I mean, everything that you said basically is from the beginning of 1403 to where we're at now, and which is what we're talking about. So I may have did I tell you about when I was out at LA County with a cadre teaching basement fire?
Yeah. 20-minute breaks, 30-minute breaks between.
Fantastic. It was I wasn't mad, but I wasn't prepared for that. But it was great because had to take my gear off, had to drink water. So immediately of that day, I felt better. Just felt better, right? But the real trick was the next day. I wasn't exhausted. I wasn't tired because I got a lot of breaks in. So I'm on board with what you got going on, brother. The new 1403 Ian Bennett version sounds good so far. You got me on board. Put it that way.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad to know.
Yeah, you can sleep tonight knowing I'm happy, right? Oh, good. Barnes is happy. That fucking big-eared bastard. Okay, so my turn to play the game. Here's what I would add. And do you know what I'm going to say?
I can't wait to hear it.
Decon. Got to have decon. Got to have it. Need to have it.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's not something that is a shall. It's not even. It's rarely brought up. There's more talk about food and drink in the shelter for rehab than there is of decon. So I really believe we need to have a decon component, and I think it doesn't need to be a should, it should be a shall.
And I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if that gets brought up once we start talking about the revisions this time around, just because, like I said, the last standard was published in 2018. So they probably finished the revision in 2017. And you remember back in that time, decon just wasn't a thing that we were thinking about nearly as much as we are now. Right. The research hadn't been done, and it just wasn't part of the fire service culture the way it is now in the same sense. And I mean, for instance, at Seattle, we do decon after every burn during live fire. Right. In fact, even when the recruits do their first fixed facility burns where there's essentially no soot, they're not doing any overhaul, they're not even dirty, they still have to go out and get hosed off just for muscle memory. They get used to the fact that, like, hey, great. This is what you do after you come out.
Yes. Well, here's the thing, and here's what I try. So there's a big push in my department. Making a big push for some more cancer prevention stuff, right? Well, what really gets me going, and you just, man, I tell you what, we're going to take our show on the road because we're just bouncing off each other perfectly. So my thing is what you just said. Hey, even though you may not be all sooty and stuff, for muscle memory, well, that's what I'm trying to get for my guys. So if you think about it, I ask my guys all the time, what's the first thing you do when you walk through that door at the beginning of your shift? I'll put my groceries up. What's the second thing you do? I take my gear and I put it on the truck. Third thing you do, check on my equipment. It's that simple. You don't even have to make them do it. Everybody automatically does it. So, and I translate that into what I want to see done for our department for cancer prevention. And it's exactly like you said. You just do that muscle memory. You do it no matter what. So that way it's not a big deal. But no, I want to see Decon in there. So you were a backup on the committee, right? 1403?
Correct.
So first off, I'm a fire nerd, big time, right? So super cool to even get to talk to you the very first time we got to talk. And I've got to talk to you several times since then. I got to meet you in person. So I'm kind of nerded out when Ian Bennett that I get to talk to is now on 1403 committee, because to me, that's fucking cool shit. I'm like, man, you're on the committee. So I want to tell people about this committee, what limited information I know. So please correct me if I'm wrong. You get on the committee, you're a backup for a specific person, but here's what people don't realize. You are there to change, shape, maintain safety within the fire service, right? You're hopefully helping everybody in the entire United States, North America, actually, for fire, live fire. That's super cool. But you're doing it 100% on your own dime. Am I right?
Yeah, we're all volunteers. That's correct.
Yeah. No money at all.
And for anyone, just to speak to the audience, anyone out there who's listening who thinks that the folks on the committee don't know what they're talking about, go look up the names on the 1403 committee and the other, especially 1403. You will be amazed at the wealth of knowledge and experience. So I'm the alternate under Brian Brush, one of the main guys involved in the firefighter rescue survey, right? Teaches nationally, on the forefront of some of the coolest stuff going on. You've got, multiple folks from UL, Dan Rodrikowski, on the committee, people burning at the biggest, highest levels. There are many, many people with more experience and more time burning bigger fires than me on the committee who are trying to do the right thing. So, at least on 1403, you got a lot of people who are out there doing it at the highest levels. So, and also there's a public comment period. Like I say to any of the firefighters in my stations, if you got a complaint, don't quit complaining around the beanery table. Bring it to me as the captain, and we'll take it up the chain of command. So
they could do that.
We can't address your concerns if you don't bring them out.
And what do you think the talk will be about the types of fuel we can burn, specifically OSB? Because right now I burn OSB, love OSB.
I am very curious to see where that conversation goes. Obviously, for those who don't know, there was a push to get OSB banned out of 1403 a couple of years ago. It didn't pass. But there's also a small group of local folks who want to push the other direction, get us to be able to burn essentially whatever we want so we can simulate more modern fire conditions. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of the research out of the UL on the negative effects of burning different training materials, essentially their results are saying that it's all bad for you, right?
Yeah.
Hay, pallets, OSB, doesn't matter if you're burning organic hay and untreated pallets. Essentially, once you create a vent limited condition and it's not burning cleanly, it's all bad for you.
Right.
The stuff that's bad for you that's generated by pallets is different than the stuff that's generated by hay, which is different than the stuff that's generated by OSB. But it's all bad for you. Yeah. And also those people who say, well, we'll just use organic OSB. It doesn't use, chemical binders. It uses organic binders. Well, just so you know, the research says that when you burn that OSB, the stuff that comes off of it is actually worse than regular OSB because it's not the chemical content of the stuff that's bound together. It's what happens after it catches on fire and degrades into different chemicals. So it's all bad for you.
Right.
So now the research is on how do you minimize instructor exposure, instructor and student exposure. And I think that's where you're going to see the real push for decon.
Yes.
And so I really don't know where that conversation is going to go. I know where I fall. But I don't know where it'll end up.
What I can see happening is hopefully decon, because I think decon is more than just the training aspect of it, but you're doing field decon at every fire you go to. I think that's around the corner. We can either wait till it happens, till we lose enough firefighters to say, okay, let's do it. So we can be reactive like the fire service always is, or we can be proactive and really implement things now so we don't have to lose firefighters. But what was I going to say? Ian, what was I going to say? You didn't tell me my next line.
Sorry, Jake. Sorry. My brain's a little mushy too, so we'll have to stir a soup together.
I got it. See, you helped me. I can see an exposure limit for instructors, right? Like so many burns. I mean, right now, an instructor has to rotate through each group and has to be rotated out. So for me, the way I do it is I put one instructor with one group and they just rotate around, fire attack, backup, rehab, blah, blah, blah. I can see not only a decon component, but maybe an exposure component, a limit. Like, okay, if you're an instructor, you can only do, and I'm just spitballing here, whatever the smarter people than me come up with, but like, hey, you can do so many burns a day in this position, regardless if you rotate or not. You can't be on the line, the first line, whatever, to help protect. It's a weird time right now for us with cancer prevention. The cancer prevention is coming up, and I believe our live fires are coming down. Our structural fires are coming down. So that means that training has to kind of balance some of this stuff. And in doing so, you are putting instructors and students at risk, but not mostly, but I can't help but think about the instructors a little bit more because they're doing it way more than the students. So
let's be honest. You're putting instructors at way more risk than the students. If you think about the number of times that any individual student that's come to West Coast Fire Training Burns or in Seattle, the number of times they get exposed to the smoke compared to the instructors, it's infinitesimal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm going,
right.
Myself and the other folks at the live fire cadre with Seattle, we're going to every single burn for the recruits and for operations members. Right. And, you could have an operations company that gets 3 burns in a day. And in that same day, the operations cadre is going to get 7, right? Because we rotate different companies through, but it's the same instructors doing different things. And then, 2 weeks later, they're going to recruit house fires, and then they're going to North Bend. And we love it. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, the instructors are getting vastly more exposure than any individual student.
Yeah. Yeah.
I totally agree. I hope that we get more good data on this. I'm really glad to see UL doing research in this area just to see how do we effectively decon? I want to know what's the best soap to take a shower with when I'm done as a live fire instructor. I know what makes me smell the best afterwards so that my wife doesn't say hey, you don't smell as much like smoke as you do when you use that other soap. But I don't even know if that's actually helping.
Right.
So there's a lot of, I'm very curious about that.
Well, I don't think you and I have a similar experience in this, but for me, after live fires or even structure fires, no matter how much I wash my hair, I smell it through my, because it permeates my hair. Now, you got that cool looking dome. I don't think you need to worry about that too much, huh?
Oh, well, don't get it wrong. There's a sweater underneath this shirt. So,
and that's right below your nose, right? So you're okay. You win that one. Okay. I thought I had that one won. You win. The Jake and Ian show coming to you in the city close to you. So you've alluded a couple of times to West Coast Fire Training, right? So you own West Coast Fire Training, right?
Yes.
before you tell me about, I want to know more about your business. But so when I was going through the website, now the website is westcoastfiretraining.com. I'm going to put it in the description on the podcast and my YouTube channel. But here's the thing I love the best. It was one of the first things that popped up. If you go to their training philosophy, the very first thing it says is West Coast Fire Training is committed to making all of our fires 1403 compliant. I love it, brother. You're not mincing words. You're just keeping it straight. Hey, this is what you can expect. Why did you feel it was so important to put that in the beginning? Is it because it is Washington, so you have to? Or do you feel like it's a personal thing that you want your students to know, hey, your safety is number one?
Both. I mean, first off, it is Washington state law, so I operate in Washington. We have to comply with that. But the other thing, too, is it is the national standard. And I think I addressed this last time. You know, I've talked to a couple of lawyers informally about, you know, the consequences of failing to comply with national standards. And it doesn't matter whether or not you believe that the standard is the right thing. If you fail to comply and something goes wrong, you're going to be held to it, whether you agree with it or not. And so just come from a business perspective, I wanted chiefs of departments, you know, people making decisions who are really thinking about risk, to understand that we understand the standard and that we're going to abide by the standard. This is not an outfit where you're going to ask us to come in and, you know, there's going to be some wonky stuff happening.
You see the cat?
I do see the cat. He's very cute.
Right. Sorry. Well, snuck in. Sorry.
Yeah. So
I told the cat, the cat said, who are you talking to tonight? I said, fucking Ian Bennett, dude. She's like, oh, right meow? I'm like, yeah, right meow. So she came in. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you. Saw a cat joking. I jumped all over
Yeah.
it.
So it's just, you know, the legal part in Washington. And then I wanted chiefs of departments or training chiefs to know that that's where we stand. And, you know, most of the chiefs that I've talked to, they really appreciate understanding that, yeah, this is what we're going to do. This is not a conversation. This is it.
Right.
So
tell me about West Coast Fire Training. Where did it come from? Where's it at now? Where's it going?
So it started because I helped a department do some live fire training as kind of an outside invited consultant. I didn't have the business at the time, but they asked for some help from me because they had a personal connection. And so I just went up as a consultant from Seattle. A couple of departments heard about that and said, hey, that looked really fun. Can you help us out? We'll pay you. And I said, yeah, sure. That sounds great. And they said, well, the city needs, you know, an EIN number and you have to have a business.
Oh, yeah.
Said, okay. I guess I'll figure out how to do that. And so right now, my wife and I jokingly describe it as my hobby, not as a business, because businesses make money. Right. Hobbies you can kind of do when you want, and if they lose money, that's kind of the point, right? It's a fun thing that you do on the side. So honestly, it's kind of just, you know, poking along. We do, you know, three to five burns a year roughly, and all in Washington so far. There's been some recognition on social media. I've done some podcasts, but you know, I'm really committed to the Seattle Fire Department. I love my job, and so I'm involved in a variety of things there. So it's not as though I have a lot of time. Plus, right. I love my wife. I want her to continue to enjoy my company. So
you got to be careful, right?
Yeah, I try to prioritize those relationships. And so if I have time to work on the business, then that's great. But I'm not throwing a lot of time or a lot of money at building it. Now, if more people want to try and hire me and the team to come teach them how to do a fire structure live fire, or, you know, come up and burn with us, that I'd love to do that. But I'm not out there beating the brush.
Right. Well, it's cool, but I could see with your philosophy and everything that I could see it getting bigger once you've been married a while. So, for example, my lovely bride, our youngest now, all the other kids are gone, so we have one child in the house, and she's getting ready to go to college next year. So I've been taking on more and more trainings. So she's kind of down with that. She's kind of tired of me, right? I mean, you've been with me an hour, and you're probably already going, God, when's this guy shut up?
Oh, no, so, never get tired of this. This is great stuff, Jake.
Oh, I love it. I love
with
talking.
You.
Oh, same, brother, same. But she's happy to go. Like when I say, matter of fact, it's gotten to the point to where, like, usually November, December, I don't have any trainings because of the holidays. She'll say, "You got any training coming up?" And I know what that really means. You've been home too long. You need to get back on the road. So I got 3 classes in March, 3 different places, and I cannot wait to go. And I'm sure she's tickled to death. Her thing is, because I'm the cook of the house. So I don't cook. I cook comfort food. I don't cook the fancy stuff. So she always says, "Hey, when you're gone, me and London are going to cook all this fancy stuff." And I'm like, okay. So I think she likes it. So I guess once you get some more mileage, I think your wife always say, like, just go and teach, just do it. I mean, you got so much experience in live fire, not to mention now you're going to be on 1403. So I mean, that to me is perfect. I mean, what else could somebody else want? I mean, what else could they want, really?
I don't know.
Oh,
Cheaper prices. I've noticed that seems to be a barrier a lot of times. People call you up and they say, "Hey, we'd love to have you out. Can you send us a bid?" And it's like, "Yep, here you go." And then the phone call stops.
Yeah. Safety costs money, and 1403 is a resource hog. If you want to keep your people safe, you're going to have to invest in it, right?
Yeah. Well, and I'll be honest, that I've noticed that a lot of people love to teach and they love to share their knowledge, and I do too. But oftentimes what they'll do is, just because they love it so much, they'll do it essentially at a loss, like they're losing money. And I just can't do that. Right. I can't spend a week away from my wife and family, and I can't ask my team to do that just, for t-shirts and beer money. It's like, I can't.
T-shirts and beer money.
I mean,
so Ian, I want you to come out and do a live burn. I'll give you 4 T-shirts and a half rack.
All my team members, they've got wives, they've got kids, and so if I'm going to ask them to do something, even as cool as live fire is, I have to make it worth their time, and I just don't feel good about not doing that. And we'll work with people. People say, "Yeah, we can pay you like $100 a piece. You got to get yourself out here." Yeah, I'm sorry, man, I can't do that.
Yeah. Well, you're not diluting your message either by doing that. If you did do it for free all over the place, like you said, all the other problems you just said, but at the same time, you've got a business, you've got experience, it's worth something. Your time is worth something. And I'm sure you're not trying to break anybody's bank. Matter of fact, most people I talk to usually charge what their overtime rate is. And that's kind of where I'm at with some stuff. Some things are just, I get paid what I get paid through the ISFSI, and I'm tickled with it, but you take PTO, the PTO I take to go do that stuff, it's kind of different, but I love what I do. And, if I can make a little bit of money on the side, there's no shame in that, right? None at all.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. As long as your personal life and you're healthy and happy and your relationships are good.
Yep. There's nothing better though than live fire training, is there? I love that shit.
It's the best. We need it. It's like you said, we're getting fewer fires. So how else are people going to get experience? And if with good live fire training, what I love is good live fire training. I hate bad live fire training. Good live fire training can make up for years of experience, but bad live fire training can set you up for years of bad behavior.
Oh yeah. What's bad? When you think of bad live fire training, what comes to mind?
So the thing that I hate the most is when people make students do things in live fire training that would get them hurt in the real world. And you see this all the time. Okay. So you almost asked me about heat earlier. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Thank you.
So I am totally for exposing students to heat and even high heat to create a contextual cue for an appropriate action, right? So you expose them to different levels of heat and you say, okay, at this point, we expect this is normal. We expect you to walk around. If you came through the full front door and you felt this, we would expect you to just kind of duck walk to the fire and good to go. But then you'll see instructors put students in heat conditions where they're literally hugging the floor And sometimes, you'll melt a helmet, or you'll melt a visor, or discolor a shoulder pad. And they tell the students, boy, wasn't that cool? And half the time the instructors would have an extra sweater on underneath, or an extra hood on underneath. And so the instructor's actually standing up when the students are hugging the ground. And so if you think about the contextual cue the students is learning in that environment, what they're learning is, I am burning here, but the instructor is okay. So actually I am weak.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and there's something wrong with me that I can't take this level of heat. This is a level of heat where probably the wall would be on fire, and, or the carpet would be starting to off gas, but it's not, because it's a facility. And so I fry the students, I make them feel weak. And so now when they go inside a real burning building and they're crawling down a hallway and they're getting pressed to the floor by that heat, what's their unconscious reaction is, I got to keep going forward, because this is not, I've been contextualized that if I don't put up with this heat, I'm weak.
Right.
And I haven't been told that I have to flow water here. So we do a heat orientation for our early recruits, and we put them, we bring the heat level down so they're on their knees and they're feeling it. But the context that we give them is, we get down low with them and we tell them, this is not normal. If you ever feel this again, this is your red flag moment. When you feel this, it's time to open the line. If you don't have the nozzle in your hand, you need to back up, isolate yourself from the fire, or leave this area, right? So we create the same conditions, but we create a contextual cue that gives them a positive action. But you see tons of live fire training where they're not creating those cues. They're just running around in heat with no context, where you're pushing them down a hallway, and especially in fixed facilities where things don't burn, and they just say, take it until I can see the fire right in front of me, and then I flow some water. And if you think about the dangerous habits and the dangerous context you're giving, you're teaching the exact wrong lesson. And so that's what I hate about bad live fire training, is you teach the wrong lessons. You teach dangerous lessons.
Right. On point, brother. On point yet again. And the thing, I always go back to, this was an actual fire, and I was new in Lexington. So I was probably 4 years in the fire service total, 3 years in the Air Force, hardly any fires in the Air Force. But when I got to Lexington, Kentucky, lots of fire. So I was on the nozzle, and we were going in. It was a double drywall. We called them government ovens, because they double drywalled these condos. And it was just a couch fire, but the couch took off, modern fuel type thing. So when I'm going in, the fire is putting me in the position it wants me in. It doesn't want me up. It wants me down. Well, I got to also go there. Back in the day, you didn't spray water, right? You didn't spray water till you actually saw flame. That was kind of the deal. Well, with a couch, it's all black smoke, and you got to get on top of those things before you see the fire. I want to open the nozzle. My instinct is, hey, cool this off, but I can't. Well, the guy behind me is pushing me, so my body's getting slower. He's pushing me. Go, go, go. Don't be pussy. Go, 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 go. I get there, put the fire out finally, melted my ears, 2nd and 3rd degree burns on my ears. I wasn't going to quit. Go back to what you said earlier about our egos. Yeah. I wasn't going to quit. But here's what I realized, and now I apply this into my trainings, and I apply it when I talk to people, when I'm teaching stuff about it. It's important. People always say, well, why do you need to know, conduction, convection, radiation? You got to know all of that, dude. It plays into everything. How you use that information is up to you. But for me, I was taking a beating. I was taking all that radiant heat on top of everything else. The guy behind me pushing me, I was blocking the radiant heat. He wasn't feeling hardly anything. He was getting low behind me. So he didn't have that radiant heat. He had the convected and maybe some conducted from the ground.
He didn't even really have much convected. If you think about how water flows, you're right here. Convected heat hits you, rolls up over, creates a vacuum space behind you, and it comes down behind him. He's not even getting convected heat.
Dude, I didn't even think about that. You're right. Just like NASCAR, right? So yeah, but I try to apply that to my trainings and teaching people. You cannot judge somebody on the nozzle like that. And you're pushing them, and they pushed me. And I got 2nd and 3rd degree burns. Now, I was a new firefighter, so I was tickled to death. Don't get me wrong. My personal me moments were like, oh, this is awesome. And I remember the major saying, well, at least we know he can take the heat. And I thought, oh, that's the greatest compliment I could get. looking back on it now, 54-year-old Jake would tell, 20-some-year-old Jake, don't be an idiot, dude. Learn what fire does. Learn why you're feeling what you're feeling, and then open the nozzle, dude. Open that nozzle. Don't worry about whether you're going to ruin somebody's desk or their couch. I mean, that was a big thing back in the day. You were taught, don't ruin people's stuff. Don't spray that water. That was crazy, man. I don't know how we did what we did back then.
It's funny. Two examples I'll give you. People always want you to take heat in the fixed facility because they struggle to show realistic fire because of the way fixed facilities are designed.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny, you go into an acquired structure and you make the hallway hot enough to burn so it does catch on fire. Suddenly, no one's interested in taking any heat anymore. They're like, oh yeah, that hall was on fire. I think I'm going to flow some water down that hallway.
Oh, you talk about cues and clues. They're all over the place, man. If you just listen to your body, if you're hot, try to get less hot.
Well, it's funny too. I remember explaining UL's thing about cooling as you advanced to my mom, because we talk about work all the time. And she was like, whoa. But you're telling me this is the latest, greatest science? Like, if it's hot, you should open the line and cool it off? Like, why wouldn't you do that? That doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, well, let me tell you about the history of the fire service.
I remember one of yours teaching me all about, because I thought, honestly, flowing and moving and flowing right away was like some kind of new latest and greatest, until he explained. Aaron Field said, no, before they had SCBAs, they did all that shit. They had no choice. Then we got gear and we got an SCBA, so we were able to move a little bit quicker and get in there, but we didn't have to flow water. So everything comes back around full circle. And I hate to think of the people that we've injured and God forbid killed with this bad information. Nobody challenging it. It just was what it was. And now we got UL FSRI, UL NIST. We got the science. We got the science right there. And it's free. It's easily accessible. And people still don't want to use it because that's not the way we did it back in the day.
Well, and who doesn't like to singe their helmet a little bit? It's such an ego boost. Like, the idea that you can take the heat. I mean, and there may be times when you do need to take it. And that's part of the live fire training as well. You can design scenarios where you can create heat safely, make people work so they can experience their limits in heat. And they can realize, I can work this hard, and this is what it means for my gear to be saturated, and me not to be dying. And all those are important learning lessons, but they have to be taught the right way.
Right.
So how do we translate the lessons or the information that UL is creating into like sensations and visual and auditory cues in the firefighter so that it means something?
Right. Well, we have to unlearn before we can start learning right now in the fire service, thanks to these studies. I remember back in the day, they would black out your mask, and they would tell you, okay, it's really hot, and your mask will be blacked out. It's not live fire. And then, okay, now go search. Well, we were teaching them 100% wrong, right? We were teaching them, if you're at floor level and it's pitch black, you can't see anything, and it's high heat, you need to be getting out or flowing water or find that person a little quicker. But we have to unlearn that, because there's nothing worse in the fire service than that one phrase. Everybody hates it, but everybody says it. We've always done it that way. And that is a big, tall mountain to have to climb with science. It really is. Science is heavy on your back. It's hard to climb that mountain.
Well, that's why you have to use the live fire training. I mean, there's been a number of departments that we've worked with, and the training chief or the chief of department will say, well, I'm reading this UL stuff about applying water as you advance, and I want my folks to do that, but I'm getting resistance. Can you help me? And so then you create those conditions in the hallway, hot, heavy smoke, but you let it go until it lights off. And then you set the observation group there, and the attack line goes, and they flow and move as they advance. And the observation group can feel the change in heat, and they can see how the smoke moves behind the nozzle. And now I don't have to convince you with some weird intellectual science that you might not understand or care about. I can say, look, flow and move. You see how much better you feel now? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I get it. So I mean, I remember one time we just had this short little hallway leading out into a kitchen, and we lit the fire in the bedroom, and we had, heavy black smoke coming down the hallway, and then it all just lights off as the vent profile changes. And it's hot. We're all going like this. We send a line, they flow and move, and literally as the line, they haven't even made the fire room yet, I stand up in front of all the students, take off my glove, and put it up next to the ceiling. Where a minute, like less than 30 seconds, there'd been fire coming out of the hallway where I was putting my hand, and now I'm like, look, I can stand up with my bare hand, and it's fine, right? And then you pull them out later, and you show them the thermal imaging camera, and you can see the temperature in the hallway go from 1,500 degrees at the ceiling to 170 degrees at the ceiling. Wow! And
that's trust. That's trusting your training right there. If you do that.
That's where the experience as the live fire instructor comes in, right? Because it's not trust. It's not me like making an assumption. It's that we've done this a bunch of times already, so I know what the effect is going to be. I'm not taking a risk. Right. I know what the effect is going to be, and so because I know the person on the nozzle, I know the instructor who's with them. We understand their capabilities, and so I can guarantee that what I'm going to do next is going to be okay. I'm not taking a risk. It's because of our level of preparation and experience.
Right.
But when you show that, and then you say, hey, you should cool as you advance, because if you don't, you're betting that the vent profile won't change while you're in that hallway and everything lights off, then you can just show them. You could say that, and then you put the smoke in the hallway, and then you change the vent profile, and then it lights off, and then the hose line, which is already in position with a safety line right there next to it.
Right. And
then they flow and move, and so you can show all those things the science is telling us in a way that's much more impactful. They can see it, they can feel it, they can hear it.
Right.
They don't have to try and intellectually understand it based on a fire that you're talking about that we both went to, maybe.
And that's always the struggle too, is when do you give extra information versus you don't? So what you're talking about is great. And you're right. A lot of people are like, I'm not going to read a 700-page UL study. Right?
No,
just
that's for people like you and me. That's for people like you and me, and then it's our job to provide the lesson.
Right, exactly. But I do have people though that get mad at me. They're like, they give me grief about stuff, about certain trainings, and then when I give them the why, they're like, oh, well, you need to do that more often. So damned if you do, damned if you don't. Now I know you're going to agree with this next statement, so you don't even have to say anything. I'm going to say it out there that Ian Bennett will 100% agree with this statement, and that statement is fire reacts the same in acquired structure as it does fixed facility. There's literally no difference. Therefore, we don't really need acquired structure. We can do everything in fixed facility, right?
Bullshit, fire reacts the same. The building doesn't react the same.
You were trying to be so nice about it. I saw your face. You're like, God, what's he saying? He's an idiot. No, obviously doesn't. I always say that the fire pretty much acts the same in fixed facilities. Same load, same everything, same windows open. It's pretty much going to do the same thing. You take that same load, same basically vent profile in an acquired structure, and it doesn't. It's totally different. Acquired structures, to me, have a personality, whereas fixed facility don't. How do you dance that line, knowing to be fixed facility or an acquired structure? Or do you just prefer to go acquired structure all the time?
No, it really depends on what I'm trying to teach the students, right? Fixed facilities are great. They're great for so many things. Just that first thing you mentioned, the fact that you can get the same conditions fairly consistently is super valuable. You can create consistent lessons over and over again, reinforce specific learning points over and over again. You can really dial in your instructor cadre super tightly. And you can also demonstrate lots of conditions safely that you can't demonstrate as safely in an acquired structure. So for instance, if I want to expose students to high heat, I'll almost always do it in a fixed facility because the building won't burn. right? The main difference that I think between the fixed facility and the acquired structure is that the acquired structure burns, the walls burn, the floor burns. And so that's where people get caught is you have a fuel load in the fixed facility and it grows and then it just stops growing, right? The fire just stops growing.
Right.
And in an acquired structure, the fire grows and then it keeps growing,
Right.
The room in a fixed facility will not flash over because it doesn't burn. The room in the acquired structure will flash. And in fact, they regularly will flash, and you will be quite surprised at the small amount of fuel that it requires to flash a dry room in an acquired structure. And when I talked about the fire behavior piece, I think that's what I was driving towards. You have to be able to understand when the room is going to flash over and the signs for that and how to control that and the safety steps you got to take to manage that situation. And that's where people who work only in fixed facilities will get caught early on in their acquired structure experience because they don't expect the room to catch on fire.
Right.
And so, I love fixed facilities. Tons of cool things you can do there. It just depends on what you're trying to teach. Fixed facilities are also great for like big drills. Like if you want to do like a coordination drill, bring in 7 units, run a full response. And so everyone gets real tied into what their job is on the fire ground, and they get to practice it over and over again with some heat and smoke, so it's more fun. Fixed facilities are great for that. Acquired structures, not so much.
I get it, and I love every chance I get for acquired structure. It's just there's so much work that goes into getting one, then getting it approved, and then prepping it. But it is amazing. It is an amazing experience. So let's wrap up here, and I like to wrap up the same way. I want to know what was the best firehouse prank that you've ever played on somebody or had played on you.
So, like I said before we got started recording, I tend to be pretty serious and kind of reserved. I'm not the prank type guy, so I've honestly never pulled a firehouse prank. But I would say the best firehouse prank I ever saw pulled was on a guy who loved to pull firehouse pranks.
Oh, those are the best.
All the time he was messing with the guys in his station, and they got kind of sick of it. So he had a side business, and there was a Comic-Con in town. And so they put up some posters around where the convention was going to be with a picture of Chewbacca, and it said, "We're looking for voice actors for a small indie film. Call this number, leave your name, give us your best Chewbacca impression."
I think I know where it's going.
And they put the guy's business phone number on there. And man, he got blown up with
people
Chewbacca.
Just doing Chewbacca?
Yes. Calling him up.
My gosh, that is hilarious. Dude, if that doesn't take off when this podcast comes out as like the prank across, on TikTok and everything, people leaving Chewbacca.
It got a little out of control, but that's my favorite so far that I've ever seen. I worry about firehouse pranks. I've had to kibosh a couple of them as an officer. You see the prank, it's going along, everybody's having a good time, and they're like, "Ooh, I can see where this is going to be 2 weeks from now." Whoop. All right, guys.
Pull the pin. Yeah.
Come on, LT. This is hilarious. Yeah, it's going to be hilarious. It's hilarious right now. Let me point out where this is going to go, and then no. I love you guys too much to see you get time off.
Brother Bennett, I love chatting with you, man. I always do, and I appreciate you being on again. I'm sure you're going to be on more in the future. I just enjoy it too much, man. I love talking 1403. I love talking training, and I learn something every single time I talk to you. So thank you so much for your time, brother.
I appreciate it, Jake. I'm always, love talking about live fire training. Love talking about this 1403 stuff with a fellow fire nerd like yourself. No one else wants to talk about it.
Love it, man. It's what we do, brother. All right. Well, you have a good day and you stay safe. And brother, again, I thank you so much.
Likewise.
See you, brother. As always, today's podcast is sponsored by Fire Facilities, makers of reliable, all American steel fire training structures built the way you train. Fire Facilities towers, burn rooms, and mobile units help you prepare to respond and survive. Our podcast today was sponsored by Fire Facilities. This Made in America company is dedicated to constructing top quality custom training structures to meet your needs. Make your training count with all steel structures that are made to last. Visit firefacilities.com for more details. As always, today's podcast is sponsored by Fire Facilities, makers of reliable, all-American steel fire training structures built the way you train. Fire Facilities towers, burn rooms, and mobile units help you prepare to respond and survive. Our podcast today was sponsored by Fire Facilities. This Made in America company is dedicated to constructing top quality custom training structures to meet your needs. Make your training count with all steel structures. Nope. Our podcast today was sponsored by Fire Facilities. This Made in America company is dedicated to constructing top quality custom training structures to meet your needs. Make your training count with all steel structures that are made to last. Visit firefacilities.com for more details. Jared is a captain with Boca Raton Fire Rescue, where he has served for over 15 years. He is a first-generation firefighter that entered the fire service in 2007 after working as a paramedic for a local ambulance company and hospital. Jared specializes in hazardous materials, rope rescue, trench rescue, confined space, and heavy extrication as a part of his department's regional hazmat team for Boca Raton and Palm Beach County. Jared is the author of the book, The Modern Fire Officer, which is intended to help officers create and motivate hardworking, healthy crews and prepare them for the many challenges they will face while providing top-notch internal and external customer service. Ian Bennett is a captain in the Seattle Fire Department. Ian Bennett is a captain in the training division of the Seattle Fire Department. He was one of the lead. Today's guest is Ian Bennett. Now, Ian is a captain in the training division for Seattle Fire. He is one of the leads for the Seattle's live fire cadre. Taught at the Washington State Fire Academy for 3 years, and he's the owner-operator of West Coast Fire Training, which he started in 2018. West Coast Fire Training helps departments put on acquired structure live fire training. You can check out his website and Facebook page for more on that. Now, Ian is an amazing person. I've had him on the podcast before. I love talking to him. I chat with him somewhat often, but he is a great inspiration when it comes to live fire training. He does it a lot. He has a lot of great information. Be sure to listen to him. With that, here's Ian Bennett. So that's part one with Ian. Now, look forward to part two. It gets even better. He is just a motivating person. If you like training, if you like live fire training, listen to the rest of this. So that's part one with Ian Bennett. Just a fantastic guy. I could talk 1403 with him all day long. Matter of fact, we keep talking about it in part two. Listen to it next Monday. Eric Jones joined the fire service back in 2006, and he has served as a volunteer, part-time, and full-time firefighter. Eric is currently a captain and a training officer with the Scottsburg, Indiana Fire Department. Captain Jones is passionate about continuing education and training in the fire service. He has worked with several organizations, including the IFIA, which is the Indiana Fire Instructors Association, FDIC, which we all know what that is, IDHS, the Indiana Department of Homeland Security, and he's worked with even more developing programs, conducting training, and education boards. He was awarded the 2022 Indiana Fire Instructor of the Year by the Indiana Fire Chiefs Association. He has published articles on social media impacts in the fire service, and he has published articles on social media impacts in the fire service, responsibilities of fire service leaders, and personal and professional assessments in the Fire Engineering magazine. And Captain Jones has written several articles for Fire Engineering magazine. No. And on top of all that, Captain Jones has written several articles. So that was part one with Eric Jones. He's a great guy. He lives close by. I'm very fortunate to have meetings and talk training with him. Stand by for part two. It's coming next Monday. You're going to love it. And with that, here is Jared Vermeulen. And with that, here's Jared Vermeulen. Okay, so that's part one with Captain Jared. Great guy. His book is getting me motivated. I've already listened to it and on audio. So that's part one with Jared Vermeulen. Now, Jared is a fantastic guy. He's passionate about leadership. That's obviously coming across. Part two is going to be next Monday. Be sure to listen to that. I'd like to throw out a big thank you to all my listeners and all my subscribers. It means a lot. The only thing I'm trying to do here is make a community, be part of the community, and talk fire shit as much as possible. I love our job. Do me a favor. If you like this episode, please like it, subscribe to me so you can get all the updates and whenever. Hey, thanks for listening to my. Hey, thank you so much for listening to my podcast. It means an awful lot. If you like it, please do me a favor, hit like and subscribe to the podcast and my YouTube channel. Also, check out my private group, 3-Point Firefighter, on Facebook, and my TikTok. And do me a favor, join my private. Hey, listen, if you like fire shit like I like fire shit, join my private group on Facebook, 3-Point Firefighter. Firefighters from all around the country get in there and we all talk fire stuff. It's awesome. Also, check out my Instagram, my TikTok, and my Twitter at 3-Point Firefighter. And do me a favor, if you have an idea for a topic, a guest, or you want to be a guest, send me an email at 3pointfirefighter@gmail.com. Our podcast today was sponsored by Fire Facilities. This Made in America company is dedicated to constructing top quality custom training structures to meet your needs. Make your training count with all steel structures that are made to last. Visit firefacilities.com for more details.